What are you passionate about? What are you warm and fuzzy about? And what breaks your heart? Because, we heard about some great stories of overcoming adversity. And in a minute, I'm going to tell mine, but everybody starts and in life and they end up doing something. What has your life brought you to where you are now? Like, you heard her story. You're doing what you're doing because of what you've been through. We all have that story. And I'm going to tell mine here in a minute, but it's crazy of these stats. I do what I do. We have a fatherless epidemic. We have a fatherless program. A fatherless problem in our world, in our community, in our city. And a lot of the things that you think about stem from that. So I was born not even knowing who my father was. My grandfather was killed in the Vietnam War, so I got his name, Boroski. You know what I mean? If you thought you were coming to see a guy named Karl Boroski, you might not have thought it might be a guy that looked like me, you know what I mean, with that name. But I took my grandfather's name. My earliest memories as a child was being homeless with my mom. And, just going around seeing things that kids shouldn't see. Their parents do, And, I heard some things, the common denominator, some of the things I heard about trauma that drives you. Sometimes trauma drives you to do some things positive, and then sometimes trauma drives you maybe not so do so things positive. But one of my earliest memories as a child was seeing my mom give my sister away to a man. Just gave her away. And I thought that was odd, So a little bit after that, my mom abandoned me and just left me, and a lady picked me up, kept me for a few days, and then turned me over to Child Protective Services. And then there goes my life starting off in foster care. So I lived in foster care, and I wasn't always the best, If the people had kids in their house, I would talk to them, but the parents, I wouldn't talk to them. Because what was I wanting? I was wanting my mom the whole time. I was waiting for my mom to come back to get me because I thought she would be back anytime. But that did not happen, right? So for some reason, they didn't. I'd go to another foster home and I would talk to the kids. I wouldn't talk to the parents. I wouldn't do anything. I would wait till everybody was asleep. I would go down, take food. I wouldn't eat with them. I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't take a bath. I wouldn't do anything. I just was waiting for my mom to come back, which at this time didn't seem to be happening, right? So a little time went by, and this lady came and got me, and I went with her. And things were a little bit different. I'm in a house. There's no other kids there. And there's a guy there. And for the first time, the guy was a soldier. So for the first time, they're like, you're taking a bath. And he not only made me take a bath, he was like giving me a bath. And so a little bit after that, I was like, okay, I got it on my own. I'll take a bath, okay. The lady broke me down. I never had anybody at that time in my life, I never had anybody tell me that they loved me, that would hug me, told me that I was worth anything. And this lady, it was no other kids there. This lady was hugging me. She loved me. And so I lived with this lady and I lived with this man for the longest time. For I realized that I wasn't in a foster home, that this was my aunt and my uncle that found me in foster care and rescued me, right? But when you tell somebody, hey, I'm Aunt so-and-so and I'm Uncle so-and-so, you don't know what that means. And my aunt and my uncle were gonna be here tonight. They actually came to my house last night, but my uncle has cancer and I got sick, so he had to hightail it out of there because he can't afford to be around anybody. So I probably would have broke down if they were here because they rescued me from a place, and then going on with my life, going on with that story, because like I said, it's coming into what I do. I go through some things, waiting on my mom. It was 8 years later before I finally saw my mom again, right? Saw my mom, it was tough. At that time, there was like no real legal paperwork, anything. I went back and lived with my mom. Not much has changed. Still ran off, left me, all this stuff, kind of speeding things up. I barely graduated from high school. Back then, I graduated high school with a 1.49 grade point average. And I graduated with 1.49. The crazy thing, I was ahead of 30 people in my class. You know what I mean? So graduated with 1.49 grade point average, but still had an opportunity to go to college, right? Never thought I would have been able to go to college, but I did. So went to college. Anybody here been to college on the 5.5-year plan? Okay, that was me. Remedial, Got an opportunity to go to college because I played football in college. They gave me a little bit of leeway, So then, just to kind of go through the story, started working with kids in college. Met my wife in college. Grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Met my wife in college, and I think we got married by my second senior year. We were getting married. Graduated college, started working for the Boy Scouts, trying to speed things up, and then automatically started having a little, not really a relationship with my mom, but I call her once in a while. But then once my kids were born, it was like, I hate her, because how could you give your kids away? How could you abandon your kids? Because everybody that has kids love their kids, right? And so I started hating her. And then I did reconnect with my sister down the line. Her story is maybe not as bright because she has that trauma aspect. Who knows what living with a man has done to her that wasn't her father for all this time. So anyways, going on, not having a dad. There's so many statistics that if you have a dad, you're just so much better in your life. And I didn't know how to be a dad. It took me a little bit to learn how to be a dad. And I had people in my life and all these things, and it was great, but I didn't know how to be a dad. So had an opportunity. I started working with the Boy Scouts and started working with kids that were at-risk kids, going into projects and doing things, and started having a love for working with kids, especially kids that were I considered like me, because one of our biggest encouragements to kids is your life doesn't have to be your parents' life. You just need some kind of encouragement. So started working with those programs, went back to Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and started building a relationship back with my sister that I reunited with, and my mom. And, still kind of gave your daughter away, you abandoned your kids, over stuff. And just a random thing, my mom got sick in the hospital, and my sister's all worried. I'm like, when I get off work, I'm coming. So anyways, she ended up contracting MRSA in the hospital. I never heard it at that time. And she ended up being right there in front of me a little bit. She died with me and my sister there in the room. And my emotions are about what they are right now. My sister was a wreck, and my emotions are like this, was no big deal. So this is going like that. Which what I'm saying is, I know this is a crazy story, but what I do today, working with at-risk kids, it is what I do. Through fatherlessness and food insecurity, started a program, a nonprofit called Rope Youth. We work with kids that don't have dads, and we feed kids, because those are the things that I deem crazy important. If you're hungry, you're not focusing on what's for on the books or homework or anything like that. If you don't have a dad to teach you these things, we have this program called Young Gentlemen's, where we give kids suits, we give them things to wear, and then we bring mentors in to work with them. and this is important, if you don't have a dad, you deserve to have a father figure. These statistics are crazy, and you heard some of them. Nowadays, so like it's 43% of kids are being born out of wedlock, and if you're under 30, it goes up to 53%. It's crazy of the number of kids when we go into a school and we say we want to start a program, and we're looking for 12 kids that don't have a dad. You know how quick they can come up with those numbers? It is crazy. So just go into that, and then just being my encouragement here. I appreciate the time. Just being my encouragement. Like I said, our encouragement is like these kids deserve it. Their life doesn't have to be their parents' life. And my encouragement to people is, it's a big world out there. You do not have to help everybody, but everybody can help somebody. Thank you.